Hello friends and everyone, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. In this video, we're going to look at how we can read and write Google Calendar. Before you can access Google Calendar, you must be authenticated, right, by Google. So in the previous video, we've seen how we can authenticate our client through Google. And aside from that, we also issued an access token to the client. That is what they'll be using to make an API call to our endpoint. Now within our endpoint, remember that we store the client credentials such as the access token, the refresh token, the ID token, the expire time, and also the issue time. Now we can use these credentials to calculate to see if this token has expired or not. And then we can use this credential to make a call to this Google service. So with this credential that we have, we're going to make a call to one of the services of Google, which is Calendar. So for the complete authentication, I have recorded a video earlier on, and I think it's out there. You can check it. Maybe I'll link that in the video description. And I'll also link the playlist as well. And in that, we spoke about how we can put up our API, connect with that, and then consume this authorized URL in our Blazor WebAssembly, and then sign in through Google, get the access token, send it to the Blazor WebAssembly app, and then keep it. When making a call to the API, which is our API, attach the token to the Blazor client, which is going to be the HTTP header, and then we can take it from there. Now that we have this implemented beautifully, all that we're going to be doing here again is to get this token, get from database, and create a credential for Google service, and then make a call to Google service to access Calendar. And that is what we are doing today. So if you haven't watched the previous video, I strongly recommend you watching that. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have opened the previous project that we did. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I believe you can see my screen now. Now, I want to check our solution. We created a project with Blazor and also an API, and also we created a shared library which contains models which are going to be shared by both the API and our Blazor. We integrated authentication from this, and as I speak, we can sign in and check it out. So we are having our project launched. We have our API and at the front end. Let's log in. We can log in with Google, and I'll disconnect, get access to the API, and I'll return an authorized URL. Then in that, we're going to open that. Since we are running debugging mode, that is the reason why we're having that. Never mind. We can still move on with that. And then we want to continue by this. And as it's authorizing us, we have an ID, making an API call to our endpoint to get our claims. And in that, you want to authenticate this client with the claims, and now we have it. So we have only a claim, which is an ID. Now that you authenticated, you can see we have logout. When you check from our local storage, we having our credentials stored over there. So you can see we have our access token over here. Now this access token was not generated by our API, rather Google API. And now we have passed it on to the client. We have a user ID, which we generated ourselves. And now that is a claim that we have here. Okay. Now that we are good, we are logged in like this. We can also log out, and now we see the token or is cleared from the storage. And as soon as it does that, it's going to refresh itself and get you an authorized. Good. Now let's close all this because we did that in the previous video. Now when you check our services that we created in our API, you can see that we created an authorization service which is going to get the URL for login, exchange token, or a code for access token and refresh token. Then it's going to validate this token. Now, when you check this token validation, I think when you check here, I just added this line. What is the reason behind this? When you check this, we want to make sure, because this token, we're going to store that in the database. And Google also can make this token expire because it has an expire date, right? Second. So if the token expires here, we want to throw this exception so the user can actually log in again, because the user is not logging in from our end, rather from the Google service. So we can throw this exception when the token expires. But let's assume the token isn't expired, then you want to return this result. Aside from that, so this is a line that I added, and I think you can add this to yours too. Now, let's see one thing from here. We created our custom scheme, which is the Google Access Token Authentication Handler. This handles the scheme or the token and authenticate the user. Now, when you have a look with this, we want to get the header. We first want to check if we have header key known as this authorization. In case we do want to get it, we want to get only the access token from here, and then we want to move on and validate this token. Now, from here, we're going to, anytime that you want to make an API call to Google service to perform or to read or write calendar, we must make sure that the token that we are sending is valid. Okay, so we don't want to send invalid token to Google API. So before we make any call, we need to make sure this is valid. So before we can make this valid, it means we need to get the token from the header that is coming in from the user and then pass it on to this validate. So instead of duplicating this again in the controllers or any, we want to extract this into a separate class which can be injected, registered, and injected in the service that you're going to create. So let's have that. We can just create an interface here. So this is very simple service that we have created. Now you see from here, we have our get access token from context, which is an HTTP context. Now in there's going to return a string. And in here, we want to inject our HTTP context so we can have access to the context from the request. And in that we copy or we grab the code over there and I'll paste it up here. We check if you have the key in there. If you have it, then go and grab this header. We start with this and then get access token from this one. So and then return this in the form of string. So now with this, we see we are injecting over here. Now checking in case this is null, because here it has the possibility of returning null. In case it is, then we want to return this. But in case we do have it, then go on and validate this. So now with this service that we have created, let's move this to a separate class. Let's go and register this service and register this, the interface that we have injected to here. So now that we are good in here, the next thing that we're going to be doing is we go to our controller to read and write data to Google Calendar. So before we do that, we must have our DTO, which we use to populate this info that we need, which may be the event ID. We can have the summary, which is event name, start date, and our end date. So let's have a class here for that. Now that we have this, we can go ahead and create our calendar controller. Now you can see from here that we are using a calendar service, but we haven't installed this package. I forgot that. So we need to install this calendar service package so we can get this calendar type. So go to solution and then let's get this package installed from get package. And that is a google.apis.calendar.v3 for version 3, this one, to get this package installed. So when you look at the first method that we're doing over here, we want to get this event. And in that, we need to get a token from the context because I told you that anytime that you want to access Google service for a specific user, based on the request coming in, we can have that user's access token appended to the header. We want to grab that token and then validate it and then create a context, which is a Google Calendar. In that, we need to specify the credentials and an application name. We did that in the previous video. So we have application name over there. We want to grab it. And then in here, we want to get the event from this calendar service. Primary here, it is the key to this event, and that is to access the person's primary calendar service in Google. So we need to provide this primary, and we want to execute this command. After we've done this execution, the response, you want to have this item because it actually has items here which contains this user calendar, right? So you want to populate it over here as a list and then return. We want to we want to create it as an instance of the calendar service or the record that we created, which is actually a class, which is the Google Calendar event, which takes in these properties. And then we want to return as a list. Okay, so by doing so, we can now get a list of all the events in your Google Calendar. Now, how do you create it? In case you do not have any event in there, how do you create? Let's see how we can create one. So when you look at this service to this endpoint that we are creating, we want to create event in Google Calendar. We want to get access token from before as we did here. We want to create a credential, get a calendar service. And as soon as we get it, we create a calendar or an event model. And then we provide the values to these properties. And then we want to execute it to our primary calendar. So you can see we have the key over here. So if you are creating or accessing, you cannot go without this primary. It's an ID. Then we want to return created. Maybe you are asking us, what if in case you want to maybe delete? How is this possible? Let's look at that. We can also delete it by having that event ID. So let's see. So with these three lines of code, we are able to delete this. So let's return maybe not found or any results. Okay, so you see from here that we just line of code over here. All that we need here is to provide the event ID, and then we can execute this delete command and I'll get this event deleted from our Google Calendar. Okay, maybe I want to let me make it as deleted. Good. So now you've seen how we can create, read, and now delete calendar in a Google service. Okay. Now the next thing that we need to look at this is when we were creating our app, we're supposed to add a scope to this. Now this scope allows Google API to know the type of scope that you need to access, because Google provides a lot of services, isn't it? So let's log into but before we do that, check it over here. When you go to your solution and check this, not that one, Google Auth Helper, you can see from here we are creating a scope. And in that scope, we see we're having only 3 scopes here. OpenID, we have the user info, email, and etc. We want to add another one, which is the calendar. So we need to add this scope. Now, once you're done with this, we need to go to our application, our app, and then add this scope as well. So log into your console.cloud.google.com. That is where you can access this. Now in here, there is a project that we created, although I just changed the name from Blazor WebAssembly to Blazor Calendar, since you are working on the calendar. And now with this app, after you're done creating this, we go to data access. And now within this data access, or I think the consent screen or so, when you go in there, we want to add or remove scopes. So by default, when we did that in the previous video, we added this user info, OpenID, and now the profile. And that is what we did that in the application. Now from here, this is what you're going to be doing. We need to add this scope, that is a calendar, an event. So just click on add or remove scopes. And then in here, you search for calendar. So auth/calendar and then event. So I have all this checked and then click on update it. So this will add these scopes to your app so that Google can allow your app to access the current user's calendar, right? So there is the only thing that you need to do here after creating the app. All right. So once you are good here, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to test our application to check this out. So we can only run the API because you haven't created a front end, you haven't updated the Blazor WebAssembly framework, so it cannot have access to this endpoint. But we are running this to check whether this controller is active. We have the endpoint ready, so we can consume this endpoint in client, because you know that before you can make API call to this, you must specify the access token and also your model, such as the property for the DTO, which is the Google event, having the summary, which is the event name, having the start date, and now the end date. So when you check here, we have a Google Calendar, we can work with that. But before we do it, we need to provide access to our header, which is the access token. Now, when you run this without the access token, let's look at the response. It's going to throw an exception. No authentication token found. Please log in again because the token isn't found. Okay. So now that we have this and this is active, we're going to build our Blazor front end. Now I have built a simple one over here, and that's what we're going to be using to test this out. So now that we have our login already created as a component, and we have a logout also integrated, now in our home page, we can just have a button after we are logged in, and you can have an edit form to handle this. But when you check I think the weather component, that is where we are making an API call, in that you want to add the token to the header before you make an API call. That is the best way to handle that. But when you go to our home component that we want to create our buttons to create event and now read event and now delete event. Do we need to all the time get a token from the cookie? Oh, no. Yeah, that is the local storage, and then attach it to the HTTP client before we make a call. Well, we don't want to duplicate code, so let's create a service to handle that. So this is what we have over here. We're going to create a client using this HTTP client factory that we installed from the previous video. We can then grab this and then return HTTP client with token. So let's create a class for that. So look at the service that we have created to return an HTTP client with authorization header. We want to get it from the local storage. We first create a client after we've gotten the token. In case the token is not null, we want to attach it to the header. But in case it is, then the instance that you created here with no header, return that. But in case user the token is not null, then it's going to amend this, add it, and now return the same client. Now let's grab this custom HTTP client. Let's go to our Blazor project. Let's go to the program.cs file and register this. Now let's go and inject it. So we can go to our folder component, and in here, let's inject it. And then we can go ahead, get rid of all this, and then create client. Now this should be an await. And then with this command that we have, we can use it to make a call. So now that we have this, all that we need to do here is inject it and I'll use it in this way. Since you're going to be using that in more than one component, I suggest we move it from this weather to our import component. So from here, you see we have this import in our solution. So let's make it available for once in our components. And then here it will fix it. Yes, it's fixed. Now let's go back to the home page. And within the home page, I think I can just grab this. There's no need for me to get this token. You don't need it again. Then we are not checking this. Okay. I can just grab this. Then from our home, we want to have button. So let's have our code section. Now from this, we need to, let's go to our program. And then, so Google Calendar and then event. That is the endpoint route that we need to provide. Plus events. Because when we check our calendar API, it is Google Calendar and our event, right? So this is what we need to provide. Google Calendar here / this event. That is a route to get this event. Okay, so let's say now that we have this event in here, what can we do? Let's go and look through this event and I'll display them. So I have this simple, this button, get event button, and then Let's create a simple table to look through that and display. So from here, I'm having more Google events, it's rather events. So it's a table that we have this head event and the start date and end date with the event ID. And now in case the event is not null or it has the count greater than 0, we want to look through that. And in that we have a button to get it from an API. You see that? Good, so this is going to get it. Now, if you want to create it, then we need another event to handle that. So Google event, let's say this is create Google event. Let's create a model for that. Now this model is responsible for creating an event. So maybe on top here, we can put this here to create event. It's an edit form, and in that we need a summary, the start date, and the end date. And when the button is clicked, which is submit, we want to call this create event. So let's go and handle this create event down here. And we're going to be doing same here. We create a client, then we want to make a post, which is Google event. So that's the Google Calendar. And then event as a post. And then we need to provide in the model that we have populated. And that is all. Now, what of delete? So with delete, we can also have a button and then an input text box so we can delete it. Now down here, we need the table. We can say delete. So delete event, we're taking an input with a text, and then delete event, we need to attach an ID to that. So let's have string, then delete event. And in here, when this button is clicked, what do you want to do? You want to delete it. We need to create client, and then you want to delete async. And it is the same route, Google Calendar events, but within this, we need to provide the parameter here, which is the delete event ID, and get rid of this because it's not a payload. Okay, now this is all that we need to do it. Now you can see that if you're able to handle the authentication in our API for clients in Blazor or any front end, it becomes easy for you to do it. You see, so any front end, you can work with that. All that you need to do here is attach this access token to the header, and I'll make an API call to the API that we built. And then our API will forward it to Google API to retrieve and create your calendar event. Okay, so let's say I think we are good. We can run this. So when the app loads up, you see you are not authorized, and in this we cannot get event. If I click on this and go to inspect element, and within this, if I click on this network tab and I click on get event, now let's see, it's going to fetch, and let's see the response. You see from here, there's an issue. Let's go and check. So no authentication token found, right? So please log in, and this will not continue. So you may have issue with that. So it means it is API is protected. You cannot make an API call even if you are not authenticated, right? Now let's go and authenticate ourselves here. So we're going to log in to Google and then get back to our API, and then we can forward our call to that. Okay, now you see from here, you're going to access the calendar of this user. So Google is giving us some warnings. We are not authorized. Well, we want to go on. This is a test, so we haven't published the app yet, so it is not trusted. But well, for testing, so no problem. So we are waiting to see our credentials stored. Yes, and that is that is it. Yeah, you have it over here from the application. There's our access token, the user ID. Now, when the app loads up from here, you see now you are authorized. These are claims. Now, if I click on get, so set, let me clear everything from this network tab, and I click on get. Now, check it out. So when you look at this, there's an event that I have created. There's an event ID. Okay, so I created this when I was testing mine before this video. But well, let's create it now. So let's say, okay, so this is my event. Maybe kindly recording it. There's an event that I should have created it already. So it's 2025, and then the date is maybe still in. Having that, whatever it is, you want to have the same. So here we can have your start date and you can have your end date, right? So 02/02/2025, maybe same thing, 02/03/2020, 2025. Oh, 2025. Okay. Then click on event. Now let's create this event. So let's see if you have 201, access token is added to the header. And if I click on get event, you can see I'm having this currently recording video. I can have another one. So upload it, let's say soon. Then I can even add the date. Then create this and check it out from here. If I click on get, I have all these events. Now, when you reload this application, your token is still there in the application. As far as your access token is still live, you can make an API call to Google service and read all your calendar. So with this, when you sign in your account in your phone or device and go to Google Calendar, the event that we have created here, we have them here. You're going to get same event in there. Yes, and that is a way that you can handle read write event in your Google Calendar through your API and then consume that in your front end, which is in this case Blazor WebAssembly. All right, so guys, that is it. We've seen how we can integrate this in our web API. Yes, and this is amazing. I believe you have been able to do it. If you are having any difficulties in doing this, put it in the comment below and I'll help you or I'll just attend to you so we can all solve this together. All right, so that is it for this. Stay tuned for the next informative content like this. If you are happy with this or if you learned something new, then do not forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, then you do subscribe. And after you are done subscribing, do not forget to hit on that like button and also the notification bell so you do not miss any of my upcoming content. All right, so then take care and see you again.